are fascinating creatures. Introduced in the movie The Great Wall, these reptilian aliens have captured the eyes and hearts of many. They are a horde of reptilian-like creatures that came from another world. And just like most of these movies, they came via a meteor, which means that they're clearly from outer space.
The meteor that struck Gowu Mountain, turning it green and releasing the Tao Tie. From that day on, the Tao Tie rise every 60 years to scourge the north of China.
Now, of course, because the culture is so superstitious, the people believe that the reason the Tao Tei came in the first place was to remind them of what happens when they become too greedy. But since these creatures can feed and be killed, it's very clear that these aliens are just animals, just like the ones we have on Earth. The first thing that we note about these creatures is that they're green. The second thing we note is that there's a vast horde of them that just keeps going on forever and ever. They have the body shape of canine mammals, sporting 4 legs and a digitigrade stance. They also have what looks like a mane or a hairy row on their back. The similarities basically stop there. There are 3 types of these monsters that we've seen. The soldiers, or the majority of the horde, that have eyes on their shoulders. Why they have eyes on their shoulders? I have no idea. They have green blood, and a head that seems to be mostly a jaw, with huge nostrils. It's possible that these creatures, or these soldier versions, have eyes on their body, so that as they're attacking or eating, they can keep a lookout on either side of their body for anything else that's happening that could be a detriment to themselves or their queen. Then there are the royal guards, these big gorilla-looking reptiles that are larger than all the rest. They're the defense or the queen's personal bodyguards, and they never leave the queen's side. There are not many of these guys, but they are gigantic, and they look a bit like gorillas with their stance and their profile. They're probably built that way so that they can be good defense. They're very bulky and very armored. Their frills can fold and unfold to form a shield, a literal impenetrable umbrella that shelters the queen, and no sharp projectile, missiles, bombs will come through, which leads me to believe that their faces are also highly armored. These dudes are built for protection. They're only seen unfolding their frills when they come at a stop so that the queen can get a better look at her surroundings. The frills go back, it's kind of like ears, and like the Jeepers Creepers creature, they collapse in from the top and bottom, like a claw, or like a spider folding its legs, and then hang on the side of the creature's face, ready to open up at a moment's notice if there's any danger. They also have very sharp protrusions off the side of their elbows. The only purpose these guys seem to serve is to protect the queen, and that's basically it. You don't ever see them fighting. We don't even see them turning back around to face the queen. They're literally just there to be her escorts. And there are only about 20 to 30 of them. And then we have the queen herself. The queen is a beautifully adorned, elegant-looking creature. She's smaller than her guards, but twice the size of her soldiers. Like her guards, she has eyes on her head and nowhere else. Whenever there's an attack imminent, the guards quickly open up their frills and protect the queen. She's smart enough to know when there's an attack on the way, because she's always on the lookout as well. And usually the guards will spot the attack before she does, but if she does spot it, she's intelligent enough to know to duck. Anything that's coming towards her, no matter what it is, the queen has to be wary, because from what we're made to believe in the movie, she's the only one of her kind, and the one responsible for replenishing the population of these Tao Tei. The queen seems to have a vindictive nature, and she seems far more intelligent than her soldiers. Depending on what happens, like if this is a chess game, she will quickly give orders to the others as to what to do. It seems as though the queen has the ability to telepathically communicate with the rest of the horde, because as she stops, she can make noises with her mouth, but over long distances, she will bend her head and use her frill in between her flexible horn-like things to emit vibrations that seem to carry across the field to all of the other Tao Tie. They will then receive these orders with their little sonar receiver shiverback ridge things, which is very strange the way these things operate, but they oscillate and vibrate when receiving orders from the queen. This way she doesn't really need generals because she can just give orders to the army and they will course correct based on what she wants. It seems as though she doesn't even have to tell them in many words. She can probably just look at somewhere that she wants them to attack and direct them to that spot, and they will just know automatically what that means, almost as though she's the remote control for these little units. The rest of the Tao Tie, the soldiers, are literally pawns, and that's because they are completely unable to function without their queen. They seem to have intelligence when planning an attack, but as soon as the queen is out of the equation, they all freeze as if they've been put to sleep, like they're in a state of catatonic shock or something. They're still standing or holding on to places that they were previously climbing up, but it's like their brains no longer function to make them think for themselves or even move. Why this is, I have no idea. Maybe just for the story, they have this Dracula-esque thing going on, like if you kill the one, all the others just automatically die for plot convenience, so the humans have a happy ending. But this makes me believe that the queen created them, not as offspring, but as biological machines that function as extensions of herself. These creatures are highly aggressive and very voracious. The primary weapon of choice are their jaws. And as we saw near the end of the movie, their number one function is to make sure that their queen is well fed. While she is feeding, they will not attack. They form kind of like a ring around her or around the guards to make sure that she's completely safe. Why at this moment the guards wouldn't have their shields up as well is kind of weird to me. This seems like when the queen would be at her most vulnerable, but I guess it's just for plot convenience so they can have an opening when she's feeding to shoot whoever's carrying the grenade at the time, which is also another weird plot hole because we've seen these creatures taking stuff off of each other. They're intelligent enough to know to take spears that are hanging out of each other off of themselves. So if they see one of their people with grenades strapped to its body, why would they not find that awkward and take it off? But, you know, whatever. Yo, he smell funny to you? They all smell funny. Guys, I swear to God, everything's fine. Why you got heavy black balls around your ass? What? Come on, don't dilly-dally, bitch is hungry. Whatever, maybe she'll like them. Alright, you can go in. It's just so freaking weird. Anyway, like locusts, these creatures will devour everything and anything in their path. Their main objective is to feed their queen, to attack everything, eat as much of it as possible, and then take the spoils to their leader. Makes you wonder, how much can this thing eat? Seriously, her metabolism has to be really high for her to continually eat. We don't know exactly how this works, but we do know that the more she eats or the more access she has to food is the more she's able to reproduce more of her horde. This will allow her to take over the world. They do mention in the movie that every 60 years, they will go back into their little mountain or area so that they can rest and so the queen can reproduce or lay all her eggs or whatever she does up there. Weird that there would be only one queen of these things, because if she dies and all the others are at the mercy of whatever is on this planet they're trying to take over, well, that's it for their species. There has to be some kind of failsafe in place, right? Like one of them becomes the queen. It also seems as though these creatures has a very long lifespan, so unless there's another queen that's being made every 60 years, the queen is very old. In a lot of ways, the queen also seems very sentient, much more than the others. The creatures probably had to evolve this way to fight other creatures of the same species from taking over their resources. Or maybe this is something that these creatures only do when they're in hostile situations. Because if a creature is naturally occurring, what reason would they have to make so many of themselves just for the purpose of attacking and eating everything in sight? Nothing else would exist in harmony with these things. I mean, look at ants. They spend most of their time harvesting and protecting the queen and building their colony, when a small percentage of their lives is for hunting and defense. Maybe by the Tao Tei's perspective, this is also the same thing. And we don't see it that way because they're as big as freaking Rottweilers or horses. But to them, maybe they need all the numbers because on the planet they came from, there was something way more large and hostile that would feed on her and her brethren. Maybe they had to evolve this way because they were the ones being hunted. We would look at creatures like this and say to ourselves, nah, these things wouldn't be hunted. I mean, look at them. These things are freaking beasts. But have you ever seen ants also attack people and swarm things? But yet we step on them every day. It's the same thing. There is so much more to know about these creatures. Obviously, they can be killed. They have basic intelligence and they operate like a hive. Maybe the only reason they're so dangerous on Earth is because there are no other creatures that could predate them. The queen probably always has to reproduce because back where she came from, she was always being hunted. There were always other creatures hunting her. Like ants, her little soldiers are there to keep her safe and to make sure they terraform the area for her or bring food to her to make more babies. With there being no equivalent to anteaters on our planet like there was on their planet, these reptilian alien-like things are left to reproduce and to storm the world unchecked. Another thing to note is that they don't waste anything. I used to think that this was part of the tactic of battle, that they didn't want to leave any of their kind behind for fear that the humans would utilize to study them and to know more about them and thus gain an advantage. But it's actually that they don't waste anything. Any fallen Tao Tei they bring back to the queen so they can be eaten. After all, it's food. Why waste it, right? Now, while the closest counterpart to what these aliens are ants in our world, and they remove their dead, and they do this for fear of spreading diseases, the Tao Tei, on the other hand, take their dead as means to feed the queen. Like I said, I don't know how she's able to eat all of those things. It's just, I just don't know. But these creatures are the kind of mentality that says, waste not, want not. The Tao Tei are very interesting creatures. Powerful, social, carnivorous, reptilian, alien things that rely mostly on their numbers and the orders of their queen to survive. It was so interesting watching them in action, and I'd actually like to learn more about these creatures. But that's the introduction for them for now. If you want to see these creatures in action, watch the Great Wall movie. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.